What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be analysis of England versus Denmark in the Euro semi-final. And before we start, please check out my book. It's on Amazon and there's a link in the description below. And be sure to check out my blog as well. I post a lot of content to that blog, so be sure to check that out on Medium and follow me on Medium. A lot of great content being produced and trying to get everything out for free, so I have as much free content going out to everybody as possible. So let's get right into the video. As we see, Denmark played in a 5-4-1 when they had to defend deeper in their mid block or deeper. Generally they use their 5-4-1. They didn't press very much for the majority of the game. England in possession, they went with an asymmetric back four. Kyle Walker oftentimes stayed deeper to then create a back three, or three players in the first line of build-up, with Kyle Walker being the deep fullback, allowing Luke Shaw to then advance into a higher and wider position. Declan Rice would be the clear holding midfielder, with Phillips playing as the 8, but oftentimes coming alongside Declan Rice to create a double pivot. Mason Mount, as we see here, between the lines playing as a 10. There is a really good balance between Mason Mount's movement and Harry Kane's, as well as the wingers Saka and Sterling for the first part of the game. So these players did a very good job at occupying the half space, as well as vacating these positions, allowing Harry Kane to drop in and threaten him behind to then look for the third line pass to Kane, as well as exploiting the space in behind when a defender would jump. So as we see, Luke Shaw here is going higher up the field. We have our two central defenders, John Stones being more aggressive on the ball when he would get it, trying to drag out a midfielder of Denmark, and Kyle Walker typically looking to occupy a deeper position alongside the two central defenders, but primarily staying in a wide area. Then as we see, we have Declan Rice playing as the deepest holding midfielder, with Calvin Phillips maintaining his position in the right half space. We have Harry Kane stretching just beyond in the defensive line, and it was very typical for England to then occupy the space between the lines, at least with two players, but many times having Sterling or Saka come more narrow and occupying this advanced area with three. And even when Phillips would start higher and come deeper, he would look to drag out defenders of Denmark from their midfield four to then try and create space between the lines for a player like Saka or Harry Kane dropping deeper. Denmark went with the back five to give them a little more flexibility and maintain numerical superiority in their last line of defense, as well as letting the wide central defenders jump a little bit more aggressively between the lines, try and maintain control in these dangerous areas. So here we have Harry Maguire on the ball with John Stones through the center, and now Kyle Walker, we see him occupying a deeper position with Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips just as the double pivot, just a little bit higher than them. We have our lone forward for Denmark and their four-man midfield just behind him. And this is the movement from Harry Kane and Mason Mount that I had just spoken about, with Harry Kane having his natural position dropping deeper between the lines, and now allowing for players like Saka to make runs in behind and more narrow. So if Harry Kane was able to pick up the ball in this position, he would then either have the license to turn and play in behind, or a defender may jump to him, which would give him the ability to then just take away a defender and create the direct pass in behind from the defense or from the holding midfielders. So we have our makeshift back three with Kyle Walker slotting in the inner part of the wide area. We have our double pivot splitting the two central defenders, and Kyle Walker and John Stones creating diagonal passing options from each of the two lines in their build-up phase. And then now looking forward more up the field, we have Harry Kane dropping into the half space, Mason Mount playing as the 10, and Raheem Sterling also inverting his run into the half space between the lines, creating very good occupation against the Denmark 5-4-1 and allowing players like Luke Shaw to hold the width. When Luke Shaw would hold the width, he would primarily stay in a wider deep position to then receive a pass around the block But when Saka would, on the weak side, hold the width, he would often be looking to get in behind and make these narrow runs to either create space for the player between the lines or take advantage of the imbalanced defense. So now Denmark in possession. So first, an interesting build up here with Hayden Christensen going as the holding midfielder in this situation. It didn't happen very much, but I wanted to show this variation from Denmark that England had to deal with. Whereas the other examples we'll look at, he'll be slotted on the right side to create a little bit of an overload. But we'll see a lot of Denmark in the build-up phase because this was their dominant phase in the match as England pressed pretty high, and as the game progressed, Denmark had less and less of the ball higher up the field. So as we see, we have our two central defenders split by the goalkeeper, and then our third central defender playing in a holding midfield role, allowing the double pivot to occupy higher space, with the wingers or the wingbacks playing in the wide area, creating width, trying to take advantage of the vacated wide areas, with our front three stretching higher up the field. So this put a few stresses on England's 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. So we have our back four playing a bit higher than the front line of Denmark. Three midfielders would then be oriented towards their two holding midfielders, but Mason Mount and Calvin Phillips would still have access to the wide areas. So if they had to jump out and press, one midfielder would go and they would still have a 2v2 in the center. So not giving up, so not letting Denmark create numerical superiority. And then with the front three as well, it would become hard for Denmark to break England through their initial build-up in central areas. Another variation is when Christensen would go to the right, as he did most of the game, and they would create the back three right away. This would draw out the England front three a little bit earlier and cause them to press in a more man-oriented way, to now the advanced midfielders occupying the double pivot of Denmark in a more man-oriented fashion, and then this would emphasize the space in the wide areas for Denmark. So it was a good switch when they would go with Christensen to the right, because it baited Saka and Sterling to then press more narrow earlier, which allowed the wings to open up, and with the narrow front three, the back four was essentially pinned, with then room to progress around the defensive block of England. This wasn't exploited as much as I thought it could be, and England did a very good job controlling the central areas and maintaining their distance between players. As we see, their connections defensively gave them a very good shape and allowed them to control the space between the lines very well, and their shifting was good at times, and they had the athleticism and the ability and timing to then shift out into wide areas if the ball were to be played there, as well as the players to then press using their cover shadow a lot of the times to then deter these passes into wider areas. In deeper areas, we still see a back four from England and our three-man midfield, but it starts to look more of a 4-3-3 with two holding midfielders, or 4-2-3-1, depending on the height of the wingers, but with very aggressive wingers looking to press early from out to in, using their cover shadows to block the wide areas. It gave Denmark a little bit of trouble trying to find meaningful connections, and they tried to go with some fluidity up top through Denmark's two forwards, Braithwaite and Dolberg, but Braithwaite had more freedom to occupy different spaces, so it wasn't a clear two-man forward line. Braithwaite had a lot of freedom to then try and get on the ball between the lines. As we see with their double pivot, the left half space from their perspective is vacated, which Braithwaite would often start higher and move into to try and either force an England defender to jump or take advantage of the space and defender of England who's not jumping. So that's the analysis, guys. A quick one today. Just want to go through a few concepts of England, who did win the match 2-1. Let me know in the comments section below if you thought the penalty at the end of the game was a soft one. Be interested to hear everyone's comments. But thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.